I've been thinking about the Bible and the story of the man they call Jesus contained within that book in the context of the technology that exists currently as I speak in the year 2025. This technology makes it possible for the voice to be recorded and then exist in perpetuity. Once anything like what I'm speaking right now is recorded and uploaded into the internet, it is there for as long as the servers exist, for as long as electricity exists to power them. Movie studio executives have learned this lesson very clearly over the past 2 decades or so as they watch torrenting pirate movies. No matter what they do, once the file is uploaded to the internet, and little pieces of it can be drawn from all the computers that have the file, there's no way to take it down. There's no way to remove it from the internet. And it's similar with anything along those lines. Anything that's recorded and uploaded and stored on a bunch of different computers, it can never be taken down in the way that they would like to do this kind of thing. So what's the next best way to deal with a situation like that? Well, you make sure that you remove anonymity from the internet, and that way, when all activity is tied to an individual person's social security number or some kind of official designation like that, you can use the threat of jail or other kinds of punishment to deter people from using their real name to do these things. And that's not just related to quote-unquote copyrighted content. I mean, that's related to all speech that they would like to see censored in the future. And they will make it so you can't say anything that you want to say because it's tied to your name, and it might result in your termination from your employment or you being canceled in some way where you are kicked out of society, essentially. That's the effect of you doing one of the things that's on the list that you're not allowed to do now. And to make sure no one does it, well, anonymity is gone. There are no places on the internet that you can be anonymous and say things like this, and in that way you are able to control speech without ever removing things like the First Amendment that guarantee free speech, right? This is the way around it. In the new reality that is virtual reality, in this space that exists outside of the actual real world, that we all send our perception into, interacting with it as if it is real. Anyways, I was thinking about the Bible in this context because it would be so much easier for everyone to understand and fully be infused with the message that came from that guy 2,000 years ago if its voice was recorded on this technology and you could go directly to the source to remind yourself every time you were starting to be led astray. You can go back to the actual source, to the actual words spoken by the man they call Jesus. And there is no translator needed. There is no debate about what the entity said, when he said it, where he was when all of that transpired, it would all be in the recorded record. And it would be the most unbelievably powerful thing in existence, these recordings, if they existed. Imagine that. Let's, for the sake of this discussion, assume that the story is real. The actual root of the story is true in the sense that there was a person that was infused with the mind of God itself, the mind of that which created us, infused into a human being that was able to transfer that mind into everyone that it came into contact with. It was able to produce instructions that would act like, speaking of computers and antivirus software, the mind is filled with this malware that's preventing it from functioning correctly. It's preventing it from perceiving reality correctly. It's under a spell, for lack of a better term. And the instructions that come from the mind of God removes the malware. Just saying that out loud, it's so very similar to the idea of removing demons, right? This idea that this entity was able to remove demons from people just by exposing them to the frequency that this being was existing in this place within. The frequency that was emanating out of the being that was completely different from what everyone had been experiencing up until that time. Obviously, something that powerful would be very dangerous to the current structure that existed in this place, and those that maintain that structure would do everything in their power to derail and co-opt the movement that this being was starting, the ignition of dead car batteries. Accordingly, we are all faced with the task, because this technology did not exist back then, of discerning what is actually real in the Bible in terms of what this being said and the context surrounding it, and what has been co-opted to lead us astray, slowly over many centuries. Imagine if there was a technology that could find the imprinting of electromagnetic radiation and identify it in the way that DNA can be identified. Meaning, through this technology, you could go back in time at any point and you could identify the electromagnetic imprint of anything that existed, any being that was alive. You could pinpoint it on a certain day at a certain time, and through this technology, you could produce an image on a screen that people could actually view the event in the past. Even if it was an event that existed before technology could record it in the way that technology can record events now through motion picture technology. This imaginary device would be able to, for example, go back to the day that the man they call Jesus was crucified. It could find that electromagnetic imprint, the residue, which is a form of electromagnetic DNA that this thing can access. And it can provide the image through that of everything that transpired on that day. You could actually see the crucifixion. You could view it in a way that was very real and unable to be disputed because you're seeing the actual real imprint. And that's just a hypothetical technology that might exist. now or sometime in the future, or, some variation of it. But metaphorically, that's what the voice is. It is capable of leaving an electromagnetic residue that can be tapped into. And this is why the recorded voice of this entity would be so powerful. Because this is God directly infused into a human being as the story goes. And if you could actually feel that through the voice and it was recorded, it would be the most valuable thing in all of existence. These recordings would be worth more than anything, monetarily speaking. And the beauty of it, if it existed now, would be anybody can access it for free as long as you have an internet connection and one of these devices. And you would only need to be on the internet temporarily to download it. And then you could just put it on a device that's not even connected to the internet, and you would have instantaneous access to the mind of God at all times. And the voice that was tapped into that came here to speak it out, to affect people, would be likewise instantaneously accessible. At any given moment, you could be put into a state of mind that protected you from the world as it exists here and everything that tries to manipulate you along these lines. The issue with the Bible is what I am talking about here was witnessed by all of these people back then. These disciples witnessed it. They were familiar with the effect as their feet were being washed by this being that was so clearly superior to them, but would never think that, because that's not what God thinks, you see. God views everybody as one of its children, and it treats us like that accordingly. As we ask it for things or think we want certain things in our life, it chuckles at us in the way that a parent chuckles at their toddler who is so clearly not capable of understanding what it's saying, but it says these things regardless, and the parent just laughs and doesn't take the child seriously. And we perceive that as if God is not listening to us. Why won't this thing happen? Well, you're not capable of understanding that. You're a toddler, okay? And you're not capable of understanding why this thing you really think you want isn't in your best interest. So the silence seems like God is not listening to you and it has abandoned you, but it's like, no, you're a toddler that doesn't understand what you're asking for. And so I'm just going to continue to love you, but I can't give you what you want, okay? So it's very similar what's going on there as it relates to our relationship with that which created us. But we are left with a long series of translations of that direct experience that leaves a lot of gaps. Now, let me say, I think it is entirely within the ability of that which created this whole thing to protect its word in this way. If it really wanted to, if this was the plan, to have this being come onto Earth way before any of this technology existed, because that's just how it had to happen. I mean, that's beyond my pay grade. Maybe that's how it really needed to be. It could very easily infuse what it infused into the man they call Jesus through him into the other people that experienced it and create this tradition that would keep what I am talking about alive through the written word as opposed to the spoken word that I'm referring to here. Ultimately, I do think it's different because the spoken word can be felt in a way that the written word just can't quite replicate. But it's different. It doesn't mean it's any less than. Because you can be affected by the written word just as much as you can be affected by the spoken word. And in this way, the words of this being would be preserved even through translations over the centuries, to the point where I can pick up a Bible now and tap into that same thing that existed way back then. Regardless of any kind of distortions that might have been placed in the context of the story in that book that are trying to lead you astray, still, the weight of the whole thing is protecting that entity that is the transmission of this message, which is designed to save you from this place. But that's how I started thinking about it, because it's like, man, imagine if that whole thing happened now, when someone who was similarly here for that reason could speak into a recording device, and then everybody all across the world could access it in real time. Especially right now, when almost everyone in the world speaks English. We kind of have this universal language now where everybody could understand it. And this thing would transcend any kind of cultural programming that is just a product of where you were born. It's happenstance. I was born in the Middle East, so I believe this. Or I was born in Asia, so I believe this. In that way, we have no cohesive ideology or tradition as a species. It's divided. But this type of thing would be undeniable. Anybody who could understand the language would be instantaneously converted, right? Like, you would know immediately that this was God itself communicating to you. Immediately. It would permeate your entire being and change you instantaneously. Oh, it would be amazing. I'm thinking about it along those lines. Like, I really hope the story is true and that being will return at some point and do exactly what I'm describing here. So we can all listen to it and have that experience in the way that everybody who was exposed to it 2,000 years ago experienced it. What an amazing thing that would be. To know that you are in the presence of God. I mean, a lot of people still don't even understand that this is all real, right? It's too scary. And ultimately, it's too much personal responsibility. I think that's the true reason why people are afraid of it. Because once you accept that this whole thing is real, that this is spiritual in nature, what is transpiring here, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, okay? Once you understand that that is real, all of a sudden you are responsible for everything that you do, right? Because these things that are normal in this world are actually not normal, right? They go against your design. And that's a lot of responsibility that's placed on you. And most people just don't want to deal with that. They have too much else going on. It's too scary to accept the responsibility of transcending normality here. We're social creatures that want to be a part of the crowd, right? We want to fit in. This is taught to us from the beginning in school, right? We want to avoid peer pressure and being the butt of jokes. We just want to fit in with the herd, go along to get along, all those platitudes that you hear as you grow up. It is what it is. Though sometimes platitudes are true, right, in the world, but not of the world, which is similar to is what it is, right? It's this idea that we are social beings that want to be accepted by our peers because we need that social interaction. There's nothing more therapeutic than sitting in a room with someone else and having a laugh with them, just smiling with them, just joking around and just feeling alive. The spontaneous bliss of existence with another human being, right? And you can have these moments by yourself, of course, but it takes on a little bit more weight in terms of just your soul and its health when it's done with another person and you're sharing it with someone else. That's actually great advice that my parents gave me at one point. We were talking about who knows what somewhere along the way, and we got on the subject of money and building things in this world, and they both kind of said to me, look, what's the point of having so much stuff or this huge bank account or any of these other things if you don't have somebody to share it with? And that doesn't even have to mean some kind of a romantic relationship. It's just if you don't have these relationships in your life to share the things that you acquire, whether that's a physical object or just experiences that result in wisdom. If you don't have those relationships, what are you even doing? What's the point of it all? Look at all the things you have collected. In the end, it all piles up so tall to one big nothing at all. It's a great song lyric. Ultimately, that's what it is. Someday, as hard as it is to believe, every one of you listening to this, and I myself, are not going to exist in these bodies, in this place. And that is probably the greatest lesson that I've learned yet in my years existing here so far. It all relates to this, and it surrounds the concept of greed. I experienced this personally through a health crisis. I had this collapse of my nervous system that mimicked a lot of these issues like MS or GBS that people deal with on a regular basis every day in this place. And they are just absolutely brutal experiences. Having these issues with your nervous system where nothing is working correctly, your muscles don't work, your nerves are constantly just in pain and on fire. You can't do the things you used to do, and you're just a shell of yourself. You don't feel alive even. It's some kind of surreal experience where your reality instantaneously shifts, and nothing that you used to know is true anymore. You're in this whole new reality. And anybody that's experienced any kind of health issue will know what I'm talking about there. And I was able to witness the insanity of the mind through this process. The insanity that's produced just through the interaction of being here. Having those social interactions produces it because the mind is controlled in a way that is not natural. And so it produces this effect where greed is the result. But it's subtle. I'm not talking about monetary greed or greed for acquiring things, though it is related to this. I'm talking about it in a deeper way, and I'm going to explain what I mean. But just to be clear, I'm not talking about greed in the sense of acquiring money in the way that you just immediately think of that word. And this started for me right in the beginning when you kind of have this moment of surrender where you say, okay, this is my new reality. I can't control it. This happened to me. I have to accept it. It's kind of like, I suppose, those steps that they talk about when you experience something along these lines. They talk a lot about it with terminal illnesses where you reach that acceptance stage eventually. You go through these phases until you eventually reach acceptance. So as this happened to me, I eventually reached the acceptance stage. And at this point, I can't even do normal, regular things that you wouldn't even think twice about. Opening a bottle, picking up a frying pan that you're using to cook something. I mean, I couldn't even pick a pan up to move it because there was something going on with the nerves in my wrist that were not connecting the muscles of my hand to my forearm. So I would try to pick something up and I couldn't do it. It was crazy. Even something as light as a pan. Needless to say, I was experiencing all kinds of other things along these lines. So at a certain point, after experiencing this for months on end, you sit there and you say, okay, God, I need to talk to you. Your mind starts to have these conversations with your creator because you're wondering, why is this happening? And you start to have these conversations where you say, okay, I understand that this is my path. This is what has been chosen for me. I can't control this. It's out of my hands now. It's in your hands. If this is how I need to exist for the rest of my time here, so be it. I'll just have to accept that. But I'm like a toddler trying to con my parent into something, Hey, what about that candy on the shelf, Dad? What do you think? I think I should get a piece of that. So it's kind of like a similar thing, It's like, hey, I'm trying to trick the thing that knows my mind inside and out and is so far advanced beyond me that it can predict all of my thoughts and everything I'm going to say anyway, right? It already knows me in every way that it can know something. So it can predict every word I'm going to say, right? It knows how I'm going to try to manipulate this situation. And I sit there and I say, look, if I can just get the ability back to do the normal things that I was taking for granted, I'll call it even, right? Just give me back the normal things. Even if I still am struggling in pain, I can't do everything I used to do. Just give me a little bit of healing so I can do things like cook for myself and, just be independent, at least go places on my own and try to have the ability to do that at least, even if I'm in pain the whole time, even if I never fully recover. Like, can we just get to that point? So you sit there and you're having that idea in your mind, just asking for that. That's where you're at. You're so humbled by what you're experiencing that you wouldn't dare ask for anything else. But then an interesting thing starts happening. All of a sudden, your body is healing a little bit and you're able to do things that you weren't able to do before. And a really interesting thing happens when those abilities come back and the thing you were asking for is given to you. Well, now you get greedy. You forget about all those nights that you were laying there saying, hey, can I just get back to normal? I'm going to go to sleep now. It'd be great if I woke up in the morning and just had a little bit more ability to do the things that I was talking about there. You forget what you promise in those moments, right? You say things like, hey, if you get me there, I'm your guy, okay? I'll do whatever you want me to do. I mean, think about that. How many times in our lives, because we're so greedy and selfish, do we sit there and make these promises that we probably don't even mean most of the time, right? I mean, we mean them maybe. We have the intent of meaning them, but deep down, subconsciously, there's parts of you that are saying no. It's like when you try to stop addictions and you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then there's all these little thoughts firing in other parts of your mind that are like, oh, you don't mean that. We're going to do that later, no matter what you're saying right now. And that's how it works on you to eventually break your resolve and get you to give in. So it's kind of a similar thing that's happening here where you ask for something and it happens, and then maybe something else happens years later, and it's viewed by your mind as bad. It's a bad outcome. It's something that sets you back. And you don't connect the dots to where you say, oh yeah, I sat there and prayed, or however you want to describe it. I asked for this thing from that which created me, and I made these promises. I said, if I get this, I'll do this thing and that thing and the other thing. I promise. You got my word. I'll do it. And you get the thing, but then when you get the thing, your mind almost intentionally erases the memory of those things you promised, and then later, it's like that bill comes due, right? And something happens in your life that's related to those promises, but you don't register the fact that this is the trade-off, right? This is God saying, look, I gave you this thing, and now I need you to keep your word. And we just kind of don't register that. And it's all a part of this greedy mentality where we just think we're owed certain things. You're not owed anything. You've already been given everything just with your existence, right? Just by being alive in a healthy body, you've been given so much. And the rest is on you. I mean, that's the part that is the limited free will you have, okay? You have a role in this to make decisions along these lines. And yes, some things are probably predetermined, scripted as fate for your experience, but within that, you can kind of deviate here and there and make your own decisions, and eventually you'll be course-corrected back to the path that you must walk down. But you have the freedom to at least think that you are making these decisions and doing these things. Anyways, I experienced this happen over and over again where I would reach these milestones, and I wasn't sitting there making all of these promises, asking for these things. It was more along the lines of, hey, it would be great if this happened. And yes, of course, as I have stated many times in the past, like, I'm your guy. I got your back. I'll do what I'm supposed to. You just got to tell me what that is, right? I'm too stupid to know without your help. Like, you got to give me some kind of communication here to show me the way, as it were. And I don't need anything more than what you've already given me. I'm not asking for anything more than that, but it would be great if I could have my health back. And you witness the insanity of the mind along these lines as you get certain parts of it back, and then you don't even think about it anymore. You take it for granted again. It's like I was talking about where I couldn't lift a pan. All of a sudden, maybe a couple years after it originally happened, I'm lifting pans now. I can actually cook. And I'm not even remembering the times when I couldn't do it. I mean, sure, here and there I'll have the realization, oh wow, remember when I couldn't do this? But by and large, every day, I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm taking it for granted. And I'm greedy. I'm moving on to the next thing I want. Oh, now I got that, but what about this? And it's kind of like spoiled children, who get way more than they need, and this is a constant thing that they experience throughout their whole life. Well, of course, they take for granted the fact that they're given things because it's expected, and then even when they're given things, they're kind of disappointed, like, oh, well, yeah, I got all this cool stuff, but I actually wanted this too. Why didn't I get that? And, from the outside looking in, somebody who doesn't have as much looks at that and says, what's wrong with you? You're such a spoiled brat. Don't you realize how lucky you are? That's what the mind is with the gifts that God has given us, just by being alive. We totally take all of that for granted. And this is a big part of this fake conspiracy culture and what it does to you, right? It really gets you to hate being alive here, which is a psyop in and of itself. That's ridiculous. I don't care where we are. At a certain point, you have to be a grown-up about the situation and say, hey, even if, let's take the worst case scenario. I'm living inside of some kind of prison system, some kind of simulated reality, where everything is controlled down to the smallest detail. Well, it's still a matter of what kind of person do you want to be. If you're inside of a prison with all the other inmates, what kind of prisoner do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy that's constantly telling everybody, hey, look, we're in a prison. Isn't this awful? Or do you want to be the guy that's in the world but not of that world? Do you want to be the guy that's free inside of the prison? The guy whose mind is free, even though the body is confined within walls and seemingly cannot escape? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the prisoner that no one wants to be around because your energy is just kind of nasty and repelling, Or do you want to be the person that people actually want to be around? Ultimately, that's the choice you have to make. But anyway, I observed my mind in its insanity through this process. Constantly greedy for more. Oh, now I'm at this stage of healing. I can do all these things that I didn't used to be able to do. Well, now I think I'll start complaining about other things I don't have. Oh, now I'm looking around at everyone else in the world and I'm thinking, hey, it would be great if I had that too. Oh, now I have my health back in certain ways. Great. I'll take that for granted again now. You see, I catch my mind having these experiences or these streams of thought, these loops that come back around, and I can see the greed in real time through this experience. I can see how, as a child, you are not greedy in this way because you don't even know what you're missing. Sure, as you get a little older, you can look around at the people you're going to school with, and you can start to compare and contrast and get an idea about what you might be quote-unquote missing. But still, as a child, you don't understand the full scope of everything. And in that way, you are much more innocent and less greedy. You're not asking for things that human adults ask for, right? You're not thinking you're entitled to things that adults think they're entitled to. You're just, more often than not, spontaneously in the moment, at least when you're playing, right? When kids are in that mindset of playing, they're very free. And they're not greedy for more. They're just enjoying that moment that they've been given to spontaneously express being alive, right? You can see this when kids get together and they're playing like this, in whatever way they're doing it. Now, of course, then, the other sides of the children can come out at different times and they throw tantrums and they're crying and you're tearing your hair out thinking, what's going on here? Just stop. Give me a break. But you can see how it escalates as people become older. They start wanting more and more and more. And this is all a part about how we grow into people, right? The whole thing is this sliding scale of acquiring more things. I acquire degrees, and then I acquire a job, and then I acquire a family, and then I acquire this and that, and then I retire, and I have acquired life. It's like, well, I'm not quite sure that's exactly it, but it's this curve upward of acquiring things, this pinnacle that you presumably reach. That is fueled by greed, fueled by thinking you are owed things. Okay, I have this thing, and I'm going to take everything else for granted now and desperately seek this other thing. I don't want to get too focused on that to the point where I'm removing the agency of imagining things for yourself, right? Of truly being moved to do something, where it's your calling in life, right? It's so very obviously what you're here to do, and you are given these visions of what that might look like, and then you go out in the world and you kind of chase it down, right? I'm not trying to paint that as something you shouldn't be doing. It's just always about the intent that you are doing these things with. It's about protecting yourself from that which is in control of this world currently that will whisper in your ear and make deals with you to acquire things like this. And you don't even know you're making the deals because you're letting propaganda into your mind that allows this entity in and makes unspoken contracts that will come due with bills in the same way. And this entity takes control of your being through that process. So, yes, you can seek these things out, but you have to be mindful of the thoughts that are going through your mind as you do that, so that you protect yourself from those kinds of unspoken things. And ultimately, that ties the whole thing together. That's what the rules in all these holy books are designed to do. They're trying to protect you from this entity with what seem like strict rules and guidelines. that people are in open rebellion from now because they seem too restrictive and they want to be quote unquote free. Not realizing that the freedom they're seeking is a form of greed that sends them down the path of taking things for granted in a way that they can be controlled. Because they're always seeking the next high. They're always seeking something else. It's unbelievable. I watched this happen in real time. It's still happening right now. It just happened the other day. That's why I'm talking about this. It's unbelievable. I had this moment where I was sitting there and my body, compared to where it was, is in a state that I almost cannot believe. I'm in a waking dream. It's very surreal. And I had this moment where I was throwing a little pity party for myself, thinking that I wanted this thing, and the thing is irrelevant, but I was thinking that I wanted it, and I was thinking about how unfair it was that I didn't have it, throwing this little tantrum like a toddler, and even having thoughts like, man, what's the deal here? I feel like I've really sacrificed a lot as far as my own experience here to do what I think is the right thing. And I don't think I'm asking a lot here to have this thing. Like, what's the problem? And it's in that moment, it's like I got smacked in the face, metaphorically. And I just had this aha moment where I said, oh, wow. Do you see what's happening right now? How quickly you forget where you were 5 years ago. Do you not remember what your body was experiencing? Do you not understand the gift you've been given to have what you have now? And you have the audacity to complain right now? I mean, it's just unbelievable. I couldn't believe that I was so weak that I had that experience, that I actually went to that place again. But that's what happens. You totally take everything for granted once you're given something. And I'm talking about it in terms of health, but people do this depending on the scale that they're at with it, right? If they're completely healthy, nothing's going wrong, and maybe they have everything that anybody could conceivably want, and yet they still are sitting there asking for more, wanting more. Well, I have this mansion, but I want a bigger one. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Okay, you're lost, right? You're subsumed within this greed malware that has infected everyone's minds, that has you constantly seeking more. And I was at the other end of the spectrum because of what happened to me, where forget about all of that. I don't care if I'm living in a box somewhere. Can I just have my health back? And this is why it's the most valuable thing in existence, because all those things that you have acquired don't mean anything when you lose your health. And it's amazing to me, right? Our priorities are so distorted that people will take better care of their cars than they will their own body. You know, they'll spend all this money on a car and wash it, clean it all the time, change the oil, make sure it's in tip-top shape, premium gas in it, make sure it's running good. And then, you know, they'll get in it and drive to McDonald's. It's like, what are you doing? And I don't want to get too harsh on people for having cheat meals here and there. You know, enjoy yourself every once in a while. Eat a piece of pizza, whatever. But, you know, take care of your body in general, in the long run, right? Take care of what you put into it more than you take care of what you put in your car, right? But that's what it is. We just get so confused from time to time about what is important and what we want that we just lose sight of all of these things. The greed takes us over. And that's the greatest lesson that I've learned in my life to this point. It's the mind is constantly greedy, and that is a result of the influence that it's subjected to here. It's not just greed, of course, right? It's all kinds of different things that are indirectly related to that, right? In the way that it gets you to seek out certain things, chasing these ideas. But the root of it is just never having enough. This idea that you haven't been given enough and you need more. Okay, now I have this, but I want that. And you really see how absurd that mentality is when you lose something that you were previously taking for granted. People that have big families who have never had anything traumatic transpire to them take that for granted in a way that a family who's lost a child or a parent doesn't. They very clearly understand what they had once it's taken away. And I think that's the key here, is getting to the point where you understand what you have while you have it. You don't take it for granted and you treat it accordingly. And if we were all doing that, our relationships would improve and the world in general would change overnight. Do you think people would care about the political parties or the politicians and what they were saying, what they were trying to inflame through those words in the media, if this kind of thing was transpiring? Do you think anybody would care at all about that? No, you would have not even the slightest care for what was going on there, because your focus is on what you've been given, which is incredible. I am in awe of being alive. I don't understand it. I try to understand it, and it doesn't make any sense. This experience is unbelievable. The body is unbelievable. Just everything that's transpiring in it right now is unbelievable. This experience is insane. It defies explanation. I don't know how to describe it. Okay? And within that context, you have this deeper understanding of what's going on under the surface, this spiritual layer to everything that ties it back into that which created us actually sending itself in here, incarnating into a body so that it could save us from this situation. And not only save us, you have to understand that primarily it doing that was for the people that are in control of this world currently. It's for that entity to see the error of its ways. The message was primarily for them. And they really messed up the first time around. And they killed the guy, right? They orchestrated his assassination. Really messed up the first time around. He came for them, primarily, to show them the error of their ways. And of course, along the way, he saved us. But it was primarily for them. They are consumed by their greed in terms of always wanting something more. They're addicted to what they're doing in the same way that I have my addictions. And so I hope for their sake that it comes back in the way that it is described that it will. I really hope that happens. Even if it means that I'm not going to make it because I'm a sinner, like not on the level that makes it out of here, you know? Even if it means that, I hope it comes back so these entities and those it controls can see and feel the energy that will emanate from this being's voice. Once it feels that, everything is going to change because they will know that they can be forgiven for what they have done, even though it is something that I, as an ordinary human being, would say is unforgivable. It's like, no, you guys are out of control, and I can't give you a pass here, all right? You've done too much. And so it's on that which created all of us, the whole thing, to come back in here, put its voice out through a human being, or whatever form it takes, and say, hey, I didn't forget about you guys. Feel what I am saying to you right now. I'm going to change the very frequency that you exist on just through the words that are coming out of my vocal cords. And this is why there is no need to despair about what's transpiring here or how unfair everything is. If you can imagine this scenario, everything would instantaneously change overnight. It would be like a spontaneous remission of a disease. And so I hope that the plan was for it to start in the written word, but then eventually it would be clarified when we were at the height of confusion with it through the spoken word by this being coming again, or a human being infused with that which created us once more. I really hope that's true. This is what I learned through my experience, how the greed is so subtle in the way that it interacts with you, and you have these experiences where you're really feeling grateful for what you do have based on what you've lost, and then you forget about it once it returns. You forget about all those promises you made. And likewise, that which created you, I mean, it already knows everything that you're going to say. It knows you're going to do this and try to wiggle your way out of what you're experiencing and try to reason with it, like a lawyer would try to convince a jury of something, you know. You're spinning this tale that's going to lay all the facts out and make your case. And if you do that enough times, it's kind of like the boy that cried wolf, right? Hey, man, I've seen you ask me for these things a lot, and it doesn't seem like you're quite serious here because you make these promises to me and you don't hold them up even after you get the things that you asked for. There's an issue here that needs to be addressed. So at a certain point, I might stop listening to you to teach you that lesson, to hopefully remind you of what's going on here. You don't need to promise me anything. I've already given you everything that you require. That's the only realization you need. Just recognize that I gave you that and we're good, okay? You don't need to do anything else other than maintain your integrity in that context. Keep your integrity in the context of being grateful for what you have in terms of what I have given you. I have given you this unbelievable experience. Go enjoy it. Live your life and stay true to what you know is right, that I have infused into you. You don't need to put any words in your mind to do that. You don't need to put any kind of message in your mind and send it to me. That's all you need. I already gave it to you. And whatever your path is in that context, well, that's what it is. And you just have to learn to accept that because I'm the boss. You know, some people don't do well with bosses and they have a problem with that, I think, on some level. That's probably an issue there. The authority figure, they're not good at being a subordinate. And I suppose I can identify with that, at least in the world, right? But I will definitely subordinate myself to the thing that created the vessel that I exist within and this awareness that's perceiving life through it. Yeah, that's a little bit beyond me, and I will subordinate myself to that at all times. And whatever it thinks is best for me, so be it. I'll figure out why later. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this. Just some thoughts that I was having on appreciating what you have been given, because if you've never had an experience where something's been taken away, you just don't know what you're missing. And hopefully, hearing it from someone like me who had that experience, you can maybe move into that space before you lose the thing. And if we all do that, now we're getting somewhere. But that's it for now. Talk to you guys later. Have a great summer. Later.